if that little bit more money means that my books are going to come back quicker, then hallelujah.
That's my boy right there, slotted up 503, keeping us remembering that the prices were going up at CGC and CBCS, and it was going to improve everything. That's what he said. And who knows? Maybe now that CBCS has got guaranteed turnaround times, maybe we'll start to see something. Anyways,
Hopefully.
hello, everybody. Welcome to Sidekicks Talk Comics. I, of course, Rob FatStax, here in front of the Great Wall of Comics. And joining me today, the Rogue Trader. How are you doing today, sir?
I am doing great.
Phenomenal. I'm so excited to have you on. Now, for everybody who's watching this on the replay or watching this live, I know a few people are be straggling in here as Whack Comics is finishing up their show and everything as we share some of the same audience. So we're going to do a little bit different. We're taking a break from the character based discussions we've had for the last couple months. I wanted to go back to a little bit of kind of topical other discussions for this month before we get back into the character stuff. So this week we're going to talk with the Rogue Trader, and we're going to focus about comic book pressing. And then on the next show, on the 17th of this month, we're actually going to be talking to the president and head grader of PGX East, Rob Pillsbury. He's going to come on and talk to us about comic book grading and some of the things that you should look for. So that'll be exciting. But first, let's get today's show. Hello to everyone who's in the chat. I'm not going to run down everybody. You guys can see who's there. And we're going to get started to the show because I know we have, I try to keep this to a shorter format show, and I have a lot of questions for you today. First, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself to the viewers? Who are you? What do you do? And how long have you been doing it?
My name's Eric. I am the Rogue Trader, and I am a comic book pressing and cleaning service. We do pressing, cleaning, restoration, removal, restorations, to some extent restorations. I think we'll get into that a little bit later. And I've been doing it professionally as a licensed business, insured business for about 4 years now. I've been doing it as a hobbyist since I can remember I got started when I was like 7 years old. I did it. It's probably more like 12, but my mom was a seamstress. She had a garment press, and I used to use a garment press on my comic books. So I've actually been doing it for, oh, good Lord, about 40 years.
Great. Holy cow. Hello to those of you guys who are coming on in. Welcome. So for those of people who are just getting into the hobby or maybe aren't familiar with the process of having books graded and all this stuff, what is pressing or comic book pressing, and why would you want to do that?
Pressing, of course, is when you smash a book between two steel plates and get all the wrinkles out. And it, of course, there's a lot more that goes into it. Knowledge of paper and how it reacts under heat and pressure and that type of stuff. But ultimately, what it does is a lot of the minor defects that you get in books, from creases on covers to spine ticks and folds, things like that, the wrinkles that you get with high humidity, all of that is stuff that will come out in a press, in a proper press.
Yeah, and you say it in a proper press. It's kind of funny because I've heard some people half joke about, like, I was going to go put it between two plates, drive my car up on it, or seen people try to do various types of cold pressing jute rigs and stuff like that. And we'll probably get in a little bit more about that because I want to talk when we get into talking about pressing and trying to do it yourself, as well as some of the other aspects to it. But I wanted to note that because that was kind of I always hear a lot of interesting notions people have about what I can do and how well that may or may not work. So the other half of when we talk about pressing, we talk about cleaning. Obviously, we're not taking unless you're Jerry the Jitterbug, you're probably not taking your books and putting them in the washing machine practically. And running them through. What's entailed in cleaning a comic book, and and typically what can be cleaned and what can't be cleaned?
Well, so I do cleaning and pressing, and just as kind of a caveat to all this, I do have a degree in historical documents, right? And so my goal initially was to become a curator, a museum curator, and work with these historical documents. I love history. I love books. I love the history of books. I'm also a book binder and working on not just comic books, but novels and historical novels, things like that.
Cool.
So cleaning, I mean, pressing is pretty straightforward. With the proper equipment, anybody can really press a book. There's some nuances when you get into fine ticks and things like that. But cleaning is a completely different animal. And there's wet cleaning and dry cleaning. Some wet cleaning I wouldn't recommend because it'll get you that purple label that nobody wants. So you have to be wary of how you're wet cleaning. But it's just that. It's cleaning. It's removing, pencil stains, ink marks, soiling, molds, and fungus, things like that from the surface of your book to restore them, to get them back to where they could be, and to more than anything, more importantly, preserve them for longevity. We have a lot of books, primarily silver and golden age stuff, that we need to, as a community, acknowledge that they need to be preserved in one way or another, whether it's a slab or a full preservation. They really need to be taken care of, cleaned, and restored as much as possible to their original condition, to preserve them for the next generation.
Well, as you know, I'm doing my best. I can only
You certainly are. You certainly are.
the you mentioned something there about molds and spores, and I was watching one of your videos. So for those of you guys who don't know, the Rogue Trader also posts some videos up on his Facebook and some other sources stuff. And you had these little, and I think maybe it was even linked on your YouTube. There were some short ones that you were doing, some like 1 minute shorts or whatever. And there was a really interesting one you were talking about, an old comic book. An old CGC book, one of the early CGC books, and some mold and stuff that was starting to form in the book. Could you mention that for just a second? I think it might be interesting to some of the folks.
Yeah, when grading first started back in the early '90s, it came over from sports cards, and I do, cleaning, pressing on sports cards and old trading cards and stuff as well. But it's a whole world of difference between the paper that we use for our comic books and the cardboard that they use for those old sports cards. And there's a lot of things that we're not taking into consideration. And grading was never meant to be permanent. It was, the encapsulation of your books was never something that in 1993 we envisioned was going to be a thing 30 years down the road. We didn't think 30 years from today they're going to be in the same case. And if you've ever seen those original CGC and Beckett comic book grading cases, they were little more than just a Sillamil bag with a label on them. That's really what they were. And what happens is most of these companies are located in Florida, on the East Coast, down where we're near sea level. A lot of humidity in the air, and a lot of these books were trapped inside of these plastic bags for 30 years with that humid Florida air, and that just caused molds and mildews to build up. And they have since gone away from that, and the new cases are UV protectant, and they have breathability and things like that to avoid this in the future. But it is something with a lot of those early books. Anything that was graded and encased, I would say prior to about 4 years ago, as something you really should look at and kind of evaluate whether you want to get it recased.
Interesting. And in that episode you were talking about, not only was it growing, you had to, I think it was an ASM 129, I think was the book you were talking about,
Right.
where it had been encased and the book was essentially starting to grow. and
Right.
you had to go in and you had to remove all the molds and stuff, whatever, before you could go off and have it regraded in a
Right.
new case.
Yeah,
Uh,
and what happens, a lot of those molds will degrade the ink on the covers, and Marvel Yellow is really prone to that, and that's a real heavy yellow cover.
yeah.
We actually have gotten that book back from CGC, and I want to say it was an 8.0 initially when it came to me, but it was in one of those floppy cases, and we got it out, we cleaned it up, we arrested the molding. There's a whole process you have to go through to kill the spores and remove them, because they won't remove if they're not dead. So
Right.
when we finally got the book back, it came back at like a 7.0. So
Right.
it took a real hit over the years being encased in with all the mold and everything. So yeah, it can really damage your books.
Wow. So, what is the most, you think, common misconception that you hear about from folks when they think about comic book pressing and cleaning?
Um, I think that there are a lot of them, right? And I try to be as transparent as possible. I feel like I do this for the books because
Mhm.
these books are so important to me personally, and my friends in the community. So some of the misconceptions, one thing that I cannot express enough, and comic book pressers would want you to think that we're all miracle workers and do this phenomenal thing that nobody else can do, especially with the silver and golden age stuff. When it comes to pressing, it's so much easier to press a silver age book than it is to press a modern book. Modern books are near impossible to get ticks out of and do it in a way that's not going to damage the book. So a lot of pressers want to charge you more for silver age books. I would much rather press an AF-15 than this week's issue of Moon Knight because it's a lot easier to mess up this week's issue of Moon Knight.
That's really interesting. And so, what are the risks essentially to somebody someone's having their books pressed and cleaned? Whether it's obviously the risks are probably a little bit different with somebody who's doing it as a hobby, but just in general, what types of risks are there when if somebody were to do it wrong or make a mistake?
Well, one of the first and foremost risks is, especially with newer books, right? They use a different type of paper and a different type of sealant on the inks and a heavier ink than what they used to use 10 years ago. And because of that, if your heat is too high, if your pressure's too much, or you leave them in too long, you can what we refer to as brick a book, and that's basically fusing all of the pages together into one solid mass, and there is no getting, turns it into a brick and a
Wow.
piece of cardboard. It is crazy. There are some companies that are worse than others for that. Image books are really easy to brick. Marvel has such low paper quality that they're a little bit harder than everybody else to brick. But it is
Oh,
one of
so
the
there you go.
most.
So one good thing comes out of having crappy paper.
It is one of those things that the bricking of a book is probably the biggest mistake that new pressers make, and
Wow.
they'll brick a ton of them
Well, at least
before
you
they
can
get it
use them to
right.
protect your other comic books in shipment, guys.
Yeah, yeah. Or it's a great poster now. I mean it. I've been really lucky. I bricked two books in the past 4 years, and both of them were on purpose because we were calibrating presses at the time. And I work for Hive Comics. I am the exclusive pressing service for Hive Comics. So they'll send me all their extras and all their damages to play around with. And I put a couple of those in calibrating presses and bricked them right off the bat. Took 10 seconds, and the Maria Key Cult of Dracula was just done.
Oh. So during these last couple of years, these COVID years, we've seen a big boom collecting, and collectors with time on their hand. I know a lot of friends of mine who've decided, hey, I'm going to try and take up some pressing and start practicing pressing and do some pressing on my own. If someone wanted to go down that path of work on pressing their own books, how would you recommend that they get started? And can I just pull out my iron and ironing board and go to town on these books?
Well, the iron and iron board. It's funny that you mentioned cold pressing because there are a lot of people that, I mean, I keep this thing like handy at all times. I use this a lot, and a lot of people use a tack press. I prefer this one, but a lot of people would iron books and then immediately once they're hot and whatever, they would smash them in between a couple giant dictionaries and get fairly decent results that way.
I know that going through my wife's long boxes when I took them over and found a bunch of books in there that weren't bagged and boarded, and found one poor XMen. I don't even remember what issue it was, but it was a minor key. It was crumpled as all heck because books just kept getting shoved in the box. No bags, no boards, and
Right.
I'll tell you, they put it underneath a couple of dictionaries. It didn't do shit for it.
Well, without the heat, it doesn't do a whole lot. But by doing the cold press thing, I've seen people take books from, a 7.5 to maybe an 8.0, 8.5, pretty successfully. But by using the presses that I have, I can take that same 7.5 and knock it up to like a 9, a 9.2. Get significant results out of it. So. There are things that you can do with an iron if you just want to, take spine rolls out of a book. An iron is a great tool to do that with. But if you're going to press, and especially if you're going to get a book graded, you definitely need the proper equipment.
So, I mean, I think a lot of I've seen people have done stuff from as simple as like I think you talked about a garment press or the shirt transfer presses, but then there's actual legit paper presses, and that's
Right.
what we're talking about, right? Is the difference between somebody who's doing it on a t-shirt press versus somebody who's doing it on a true paper press. Is that
Well,
is that right,
and
or am I?
you are correct. I do have kind of a background. I used to do some comic book grading. And you can definitely tell somebody that's doing it on a t-shirt press as opposed to an actual industrial press. The issue there is how the plates on the press heat up, because in order to heat up, they have this wire that kind of snakes through it,
Right.
and that is because of the plates. On a t-shirt press, they don't have to be that tuned in. So when you press a book on a t-shirt press, sometimes you will get kind of an S pattern on the book. And obviously that's not something you want, because that's just another defect. You're trading one for another. The positive of that is something with the proper equipment, it's easy to take out as well. So you can take those out.
Okay. So that's something someone would want to avoid, is some of that stuff. You want to make sure that you do the research and get the right equipment and stuff on there.
Right. A good press, I probably spend for all my presses, I probably spend on an average about $600 a press
For a good one,
per
yeah.
press.
Good.
And a lot of these are custom made. Like I had to, because there's a difference between aluminum and tourmaline, and I use tourmaline for, like, I don't know how familiar you are with this, but there are two books, Ultimate Fallout 4, which you don't want anybody to mess up, obviously,
Right.
and Canto #1. Both of those have a known major defect. Ultimate Fallout 4 has almost a subcrease right down the middle in just about every case, and
That poly bag, yeah.
yeah, they're notoriously hard to get that crease out of. I can get the crease out every time because I use a tourmaline press. something that most pressers don't, or don't even know what that Platon is and what it's used for. So, and then I created an insert specifically for Bullseye Bob, to press his Canto #1 because it had the Canto crease in it. So I had to create a special piece of equipment just for that one book, and I've used it on several at this time, and it works every time.
Now you're making me wish that my Ultimate Fallout 4 that I have was a 9.6 because of the damn crease instead of color rub.
Oh yeah, I can't fix those. I cannot fix those.
So I think we talked about like some of the, obviously you can brick it. What other mistakes? I mean, obviously I think the obvious is that somebody could, you press it wrong, you can put a crease into it.
Right.
You can probably cause a spine roll that wasn't there potentially.
Definitely can.
What other potential mistake could somebody run into? And what might be the easiest to recover from?
Well, okay, so I'll tell you the one that most new pressers make. The big mistake most new pressers make, and you cannot recover from, is they will take a book. Let's see if I have a throwaway book sitting around here. Something that I was reading. I don't.
Don't
but
worry.
they will take a book, and when they slide it into their press, like this piece will fold over.
Just like put it into a bag and a board.
Yeah, and oh, here we go. I got my G.I. Joes. All right, so this corner will fold over, and then when you press the press on top of it, it just puts a crisp, fresh crease on it. It breaks color, and there's no recovering from it. I see so many of those. I'm not one of these pressers that I don't do videos about pressing, because I don't want somebody to take my video and think, oh, I can do it and mess up books. But I do one-on-one. I'll Skype chat with people and do one-on-one tutorials for people that are interested in learning it, because it's not secret knowledge that I'm going to keep to myself. I just don't want to make it so public that people are ruining other people's books. But a lot of people have contacted me and said, I've done this. What can I do to fix it? And you can't. There's nothing you can do to fix that, because you just broke color and you just, knocked that book down to a 7.5, which is unfortunate. But I see that one a lot with new pressers. Another one that I see is they create spine ticks. They will take to get a spine tick out, you brace up the book, and then you take your tack iron and run it along the edge. And what happens is they will have the tack iron at a wrong angle and run it down, and it'll leave like just little bumps all the way down. And I do have a video where we took 15 books that somebody had pressed and then sent into CGC, and they got them back. We cracked them. I repressed them. 9 of the 15 had that, because it was an amateur, didn't know what he was doing, had it angled wrong, and just tore up the spines of all these books. So I repressed them. Every single book got a 2 to 3 grade bump. Nice. So it is something easily to recover from, and I see that one a lot.
Yeah, see, Matt here takes mention that it's easy to make a mistake, and you got to take your time. How long does it take typically to press a comic book?
Well, that's kind of subjective. I mean, that's why I run so many presses.
Right.
It takes, for me to prep a book, like I'm doing right now, I'm doing several of these for a customer.
Okay.
And it's a great book to get in a 9.8. You don't want it in a 9.6, but it's a great book to have in a 9.8. It's a couple $100. But I've got 20 of those right now. Something like that. When he got them, put them in bags and boards, and mass packed them in long boxes. So there's no cleaning. There's a little bit of color rub on them that I had to get off, but I just hit them, dry clean them. That takes probably about 30 seconds, and then it's just stacking it and getting it into the press. And that whole process takes about about 15 to 20 minutes per book. And then you have to let it just kind of sit on one side for a while. Then you flip it over. And the key is you have to press it on both sides and leave it in the press while the press cools down. Once the press is cooled down and those fibers come back together, you can then remove it and it's ready to go. But that is the longest part. That usually takes 3 to 4 hours, depending on the temperature of the press and the type of press I'm using.
And does it differ between the book like that versus like the batch I just sent you full of mixed silver and gold stuff?
Most of your stuff is a little bit different because you're sending me books that, a lot of gold, a lot of silver, like those.
They're not
old
9/8
books.
candidates.
No, they're not. But to me, every single book gets treated the same. Like I give as much care and thought into your books as if I got the same book in a 9/8 because I think there's some history that needs to be preserved.
Right.
But every Golden Age book automatically gets chambered. I don't mess around with it. Every single one of them gets chambered. I do it with a lot of the Silver Age stuff, and that's time consuming. You have to leave them in there for 24 hours. It hydrates them, makes the fibers more pliable. It eliminates, it kills off any bacteria, it kills off molds and spores and things like that. It helps us eliminate foxing and all of that. So that process takes 24 hours. I do that with every one of your books because of the age of the book. And then when we take them out, those only go in the tourmaline presses because of the even heat distribution, and they will stay in the press for about 24 hours.
Jeez.
So it takes every one of your books takes 2 days to press.
And how many presses are you running?
Right now, I'm running 23.
So this is why one of the reasons why I don't mess with trying to do pressing on a book, because I know I don't want, even with the modern books. I personally am a guy, I just know, like Matt was saying about taking time. I get interested and I'll take the time on it for a few moments, but then I just want to go 100 miles an hour and go on to the next thing. That's why I don't paint houses either. I pay people to do the job right. So if somebody wanted to find, somebody's looking for a professional, and well, I have found you, and I definitely have, you are my presser of choice now. What should somebody who's looking for pressers, what should they look like? Look for, I'm sorry, not what should they look like. They should be bald and have goatees. Because all good-looking men are bald with goatees.
Exactly.
But what should they look for in
a people laugh at me. I used to hang out in the pressing groups on Facebook, and comic book pressers are the biggest bag of dill holes I've ever come across in my life. They want you to think that what we do is so unattainable and we're all better than this guy standing next to us, and it's just not true. I've trained pressers that are younger and without as much knowledge as me, and they do just as good of a job. So, to me, what you want is somebody that's going to discuss your books with you. If you have an issue with a book, they're going to address it and talk to you about it. If you're looking for a professional, make sure it's somebody that is a licensed business. And the reason that's important, and I say this in these groups, I say, you want a licensed presser? And they're like, nobody licensed pressers. Like, no, a business license. You want somebody that has a business license, because then they're going to have insurance to maintain that business license.
Like Matt
said. Because you're sending them a huge book worth a lot of money, and you want to make sure that if they make a mistake, that you're going to get compensated for that. So insurance is big. You're not doing that without being licensed, and I can't express that enough. And people try to get me caught up on that. When I throw that out there in a group, I'll say, make sure there's somebody licensed and insured. And everybody's like, you can't license somebody to press comic books, so this guy's lying to you. No, make sure they have a business license. It's for the insurance. It's important. So that's the one thing, the single most important thing when looking for a professional pressing service. Make sure that they can cover you. And I'm not 100% sure that some of the big guys have that in play. And if your presser's bonded, same thing. I'm working on bonding instead of insurance, because that's better for me as a business. It's better for you as a customer. But if they're not bonded or insured, they're not a professional, in my opinion, not a professional.
Secondarily, seek out examples of work, and third, references.
Absolutely.
References people you trust.
Yeah, and I've been really lucky in that aspect, because I fell in with Bullseye Bob real early and did a lot of his stuff, and he talked me up quite a bit. So his word carries a lot of weight. Bueller has used me for a few books and has seen my work, and so I've been really lucky that I've made those rounds. So I've got a good reputation, but even I make mistakes. I've never had to use my insurance, but I dread the day that I do. It's probably gonna be Fantastic Four #1. I swear to God.
So, aside from pressing and cleaning, you kind of touched on that you do some restoration removal, some minor restoration stuff. What other types of services do you provide that if somebody was interested in checking you out, that you could be able to help them out with?
Okay, so aside from comic books, I do sports and trading cards, concert posters, movie posters, toy boxes, toy cards. I do all of that type of stuff. I restore toys, books. I am a book binder, so I can turn your favorite paperback into a hardback, stuff like that. I do that type of work.
I'm sorry, pausing for a second on that. If somebody was interested in doing I've seen like the custom bound, where they take some comics and they have them custom bound and stuff
Right.
into that. You can do that as well, or?
Yes, I can volumize comic books. And when you do that, that's going to destroy the collector's value of that book, but it is really cool. I did that with my Marvel Comics Presents the Weapon X run, and it turned out super cool. And I've done some custom Dungeons and Dragons binding, stuff like that.
Cool. Sorry to distract you.
No, not at all. But I also do restoration removal. So if it is something, I am a comic book purist. As a collector, I'm a purist. I have no restored books in my collection. I never will. I am also a mid-grade collector. I prefer books with a little bit of Little Tommy's handwriting on it, that kind of stuff. That works for me. So I do remove Sharpies, inks, stuff like that all the time. And tape and things like that. My kind of general rule of thumb is, if I can not degrade the value of the book by removing a restoration, I will do it for you. If I think it's going to degrade the overall value of the book, I won't do it. But I kind of evaluate those on a case-by-case basis. I also do some what I consider to be restoration, but CGC doesn't, so they're restorations that'll keep that blue label. We have one of those with one of your books right now. We've got a Golden Age book that had a rusted staple on it. I was able to arrest the rust and kind of clean it up, but the staple itself is shot. So I had to special order a staple from a guy in Illinois so I can replace that staple. And it's funny because it'll cost you, like, I've spent $25 for a staple before. And this just happens to have been kind of a weird indie. I can't remember what book it was on.
It must have been. It was either if it's what I sent you, it's either the Startling Comics or it's the Flash Dell 4 color.
It's the Flash.
The
Yeah,
Dell 4 color. Okay.
the Dell 4. So, and the staple, it's a steel staple. It's an odd size, so I didn't have any in stock, and I had to special order that staple. And so I will remove the old staple, put the new staple in, and get it set up just like it's factory new. And I do those type of restorations. And I've
Beautiful.
married inserts, and I put wraps back on books before, things like that.
Cool. And so you said you operated like 23 presses right now.
Right.
Uh, What would you if someone was asking what are your turnarounds typically like right now? Because I don't want to speak for you because personally I think the turnaround times I've gotten from you are insanely fast. I don't know if that's your typical or if I'm just special or what, but hey, I'm curious. What do you normally tell people your typical turnaround time is right now?
What I try to do, I first of all, I don't take on new clients if I think I'm going to be too far out.
Imagine that. You
And
mean you actually control your input to match your output?
yeah, yeah. Um, I
CGC.
also I also don't determine what the value of your books are, so I don't charge you more than what you think you're getting charged. So a little bit different. Um, that's just kind of sticking in my craw because I got
But
hit with a
but but you only insure it for what you say they are. So if you want to send in your
right.
AF-15 and say it's only a $400 book, something happens to it, that's all on you
Exactly.
folks.
Yeah, that's really irking me today because I got hit. CGC hit me for an extra $115 on a Batman Adventures 12 because they decided it was worth more than what I said it was worth.
Well,
Like,
and it's always the
I
question
hate
of
that.
what are you talking what value are you talking graded or raw?
Yeah,
Because it's a raw book. When I send it to you, it's only maybe a 500 $600 book. Now you graded a 9.6. It's a over $1,000 book. Hey, that's not what it was when I sent it to you. I mean,
yeah, they desperately need to look at transparency there, and
yeah.
that's why I try to be as transparent as possible, for sure, because that just really irritates the hell out of me. I can't. I got so ticked off
Anyway,
I can't remember what we were talking about.
we were talking about lead times. What you try to tell people
Oh yeah,
roughly your
lead
turnaround
times.
times are.
So I try to keep my turnaround times at about 2 weeks for smaller batches. If I get larger batches, I still try to keep it within 2 to 3 weeks. I've got one customer. Every time I finish a batch, he'll send me another. He does full long boxes at a time.
Oh, wow.
So he'll send me a batch. I'll do it. Usually takes me about 3 weeks because I run half my presses on just his stuff. So that usually takes about 3 weeks, and then as soon as I get them back to him, he sends me back with another box. So
Sounds not bad. So you're talking roughly, for the most part, 2 to 3 weeks typically.
yeah, two to
Turnaround
three
time so
weeks.
is a fair estimate for somebody. So if somebody were to send you books, they get them to you, then you could turn around, either send them back, or you can forward on to CGC or
Right.
CBCS, like you've been doing for me for CBCS. And then I don't know what magic you work, but when you send my books to CBCS, they get received within like 3 or 4 days into their system. Versus me, I send them in and they sit there for a month before they open up the box and check them in. So kudos to you, sir. And now, of course, now with their short turnaround time, I'm excited to see this current batch. This is the first batch I'm doing with their new guaranteed 14-day turnaround time to see if that
Right.
actually works out for me.
That'll be
But
cool. That'll be cool.
yeah, no, that's great. All right, cool. So we got through a lot of that stuff. We are running a little bit long. I hope that's okay with you. I think it's been really interesting. I got a
No,
couple
I'm
more
good.
things I want to talk about. Great. Um, let's first, before we get into this next section here, I just want to go ahead and let everybody know. If you've been watching my channel last week, you may have already heard, but I'm going to take this opportunity out. So Eric and I, we've set up a partnership also right now, and so if you decide that you want to check out the Rogue Trader, send books to him, go to the website that's scrolling across the bottom there, the Rogue Trader Utah slabhub.com, and you purchase and you go to the pressing section and get any pressing packages, either singles or even the bundles that are already discounted, and you use the code FatStax, all one word, at checkout, you're going to get 20% off your pressing. And along with that, each time that code is used, $10 is going to be donated to the C3 Comics Curing Cancer campaign through the American Cancer Society. So it's a win-win for everybody. I'm not getting anything as a paid endorsement. I told Eric I don't want anything. Let's do this. We did this whole thing with the donations so we can help do some more positivity, because this community is a positive community. Having said that, what got you hooked up initially with C3? Because that's how we first met, or
Right.
got interacting, was through the C3 campaign with Cardboard Crazies.
Right. Well, I found out kind of third, fourth hand that you guys were doing the 24-hour live stream, and then found out that it was to benefit the American Cancer Society. I am very much a skeptic of charity organizations by nature, and ACS is one that I personally have been working with for 15 years or so. My wife is a two-time survivor. I lost a grandfather, a couple uncles to cancer. My sister-in-law just recovered from cancer. So it's something that's pretty prevalent in my family, as it is with everybody. And when I heard about what you guys were doing with the 24-hour live stream, I was like, oh, that's amazing. That's my charity. That's my comic books. Those are my people. This is where I belong. So got in, had a lot of fun blowing out books at crazy prices.
You just kept stacking them.
Yeah, we
man.
did some great work, raised a couple grand for a good cause. But my wife, we used to be involved with American Cancer Society through the Relay for Life events, the 24-hour walk to track and raise money for cancer. Since then, my wife has actually gone to work for ACS, and she is an events coordinator for American Cancer Society, where she puts together these type of things. And so I saw C3 and I'm like, this is a perfect match. I got all these great ideas, and you guys did a fantastic job. So she helped us kind of, the one thing that really irritated me, it really gets to me, is, so we raised thousands of dollars. I think you guys raised like almost 10 grand. It was like some stupid amount, just crazy amount.
Yeah, hands off the Cardboard Crazies. I mean, he organized that. I was just a contributor, but man, he knocked that out of the park, and it was definitely the talk of the community for a while.
Yeah, he was doing great, did great with it, but all the funds ran through PayPal, and when you do that, right, you get hit with PayPal fees and transfer fees and fees and fees and fees. So by the time it got to ACS, there's hundreds of dollars that were left on the table. Well, luckily enough, my wife does this for a living. We can have her set it up as a ACS event, so the money gets donated directly to the American Cancer Society. There's no fees. All that money that's being donated is going to ACS. So it was just a perfect storm.
Nice.
And we're hoping that we can get 20,000 raised this year. We've got the comicscuringcancer.org. So anybody can go there and sign up. And basically you're signing up a team where people can donate in your name and send money to the cause. So anybody that wants, you can go to comicscuringcancer.org and sign up and be part of this. We do have a town hall meeting coming a week from Thursday, which I believe is the 12th. Anybody who wants to can join the live stream, and we can talk about the C3 charity initiative and what we plan on doing. I've got some artists that are going to do some coin drop boxes for comic shops. I've got comic shops that are interested in being part of. If your comic shop wants to be part of it, let me know. Let's get them involved. Let's do some damage to this cancer thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you guys want to just make a donation to the cause without having to, you don't want to get your books pressed, but you just want to make a donation, down below, actually in my links, there's the link tree. There's a link to the C3 event, as well as also in the community section of my YouTube page. You can simply go there. You'll see the announcement about my partnership with Rogue Trader, but then there's also a link just to go make a donation directly if you wanted to do that.
Right.
All right, story time. What is the biggest book to come through your presses?
Again, that's another one that I feel is subjective. So
Yeah.
to me, the biggest book that I've
Let's go here. I'll split it up. How about this? Most significant book you think that's come through, and biggest dollar book.
See, that gets tough too, because you're sending me vintage Flash Gordon and like Gary B, Conan, stuff that to me is like the ultimate books, right? So to me, one, I can tell you one that made me extremely nervous. I've done 3 of them so far. One that just, I shake. And I know that I said that Silver Age is real easy, but Fantastic Four #1. I've done 3 of them. I know it's not the most expensive book out there, but
it's getting up there.
it is. And they hit the silver screen, and it's going to go insane. But that one makes me nervous because, in my mind, that is the book that kicked off the Silver Age.
Right.
So very important book
for Marvel, the Marvel Age, definitely. I think we still go back to the Barry Allen for the silver.
I think the Fantastic Four is I mean, definitely that's the one that kicked it off, but Fantastic Four is the one that everybody knows, right? They're not going to think Flash. They're going to think Fantastic Four. So to me, that's a really scary one. I've done like 5 or 6 Amazing Fantasy 15s. To me, that one's not too scary. I've done, Batman #1. I've done Wonder Woman #1. I've done Superman 1 through 10. And those are obviously big books, but they're not books that would scare me. I think an action one would terrify me. Obviously,
a Deck 27.
A Deck 27 would scare the hell out of me. There's
I think when you start crossing $500,000 and plus, I think that starts to get a little scary.
It's not the value of it, because I'm insured, so I can screw it up.
Right, sure.
In the end, I'm fine. But
there's so few of them though too that you don't want to be that guy, right? Especially as a historian. I understand what you're talking about. It's like this is like so significant of a book that as a historian, the last thing you want to do is be the guy who is known as, oh, gee, hear about the Rogue Trader?
Right.
He's the guy.
Oh, that's a damage your career.
That's it. Yeah.
Yeah, you don't recover from bricking an action #1. Yeah, for sure.
Oh, great.
So, but I get a lot, and the thing is, I get a lot of books sent to me that I know are going to be graded that aren't. Wow, there's like some wicked glare going on here.
Yeah.
It's my bags and boards that I have over here. All right. So, there's a lot of books that get sent to me that are people's pride and joys that I don't know why they're sending them to be graded. But
because of their pride and joy.
And they really are. Like, I've gotten, 2.5 ASM 300s before, things like that. And
I sent you some incomplete books. I didn't give a damn, as I just love the cover art and stuff, right? It's like, do what we can and let's get it going.
Yeah.
So what would be one of the craziest or stories about something that's come through your shop?
I think the one that really sticks out in my mind is one of our LCS owners is really big into the foreign comic book market. And and I do Whatnot sales, and you're going to see a lot of these books come to market through me for him. And he's got one book. So, a little backstory: there's in Mexico when Gwen Stacy died, she was so popular in Mexico that they didn't kill her. They just kept going with the story. So there's a point there where it diverged. So you had the U.S. stuff coming in and being translated into Spanish for the Mexican market, but you also had this non-canon Spider-Man where Gwen Stacy is alive, and Peter Parker married Gwen Stacy. And you see this whole wedding album book with Peter Parker and Gwen Stacy. It's spectacular. It's all in Spanish, and just a really cool story in itself. So this book is so popular amongst the foreign collectors, like it's thousands of dollars if you can get a copy of it. And they're treated poorly. They were beat up. They were folded and thrown in the trash and just beat up. They're dirty. They're scuffed. Well, somebody took a copy of this book to Germany and printed it in Germany. Like they took it apart, photocopied it, took the time to put it back together. So they're photocopies of a Mexican published non-canon Spider-Man book. And the photocopy variant is worth like $1,200. But because it was photocopied, every little tick, every dirty smudge, they didn't clean it
there.
Every dirt smudge is there. The dog-eared corner has been photocopied. But it's a mint condition book, right? So you've got two versions, the original, and you've got this mint condition book. Well, he bought from the guy that did this, he bought like 400 of these German remans.
Wow.
And the original that it was taken from. And he sent the original to me. He's like, can you press this for me? Can you clean it up and make it look better? And I'm like, there's no way in hell I'm going to do that. You've got the original messed up book that all of these other books that people are buying was based on. So, yeah, I ultimately talked him into having it slabbed without cleaning it up. So
right.
It's the exact book that all of these remans.
Because
from.
now it's a piece of history into itself, just the way it is.
Absolutely.
It's like, hey, could you make John Hancock's signature a little smaller on this? You know, that'd be it's taking up too much space.
So yeah, it's really and then the guy that did this actually subsequently took the reman, the original digital files, erased all the Spanish, translated it into English, and republished it in English. The English versions of that book are selling right now raw for about $2,500.
I'll stick with MJ, thanks.
Yeah.
All right, so as we get ready to wrap this up, we're going straight for the full hour here. What the hell?
All right.
Since we're only 5 minutes away from that, what is the big boy or favorite comic of yours that's in your PC?
That's in my PC currently. This one for Gary B. It's got to be my Conan's. I'm working on completing the run. My Conan #1. I've got it locked away. I don't have it here with me. But that's a really big book for me personally. My AF-15s, of course. I picked these up at at Rose City Comic Con, Conan 23, 24. Those are big ones for me. Of course, First Red Sonja. I've got those preserved. Those are real big. But I think that my pride and joy for my personal collection, I just finished this complete run. I've got my Marvel feature #1, First Defenders, and of course my Defenders #1. Those don't leave my side. Those are my pride and joy.
My Marvel features at CBCS. It's been sitting there for a while. I'm like, get here.
I think yours is better than mine. actually. I'm sure yours is better than mine.
I don't know. We'll see. We shall see. Okay, last question for you. What is your Grail book that you're chasing, or maybe you're not actively chasing it, but your Grail book that you'd go, before I leave this earth, I want to own this book.
Right now, kind of, there's a lot of books I'd like to have, but
Sure.
I'm working on runs and doing that type of thing, and that's kind of taking over my mindset at the moment. The one that I'm really chasing, I would like an interesting copy of GI Joe #1. I know it's not a great big book, but it is an important book to me personally.
The Greatest American Hero or the GI Joe previous in the Silver Age stuff.
No, the Greatest American Hero, the
Okay.
Larry Hama issue #1. And I would like and I don't do signature books in my personal collection. I would like a Larry Hama personal autograph. I had a military career that was really important to me, and it's all because of those books and GI Joe. So that one's personally very important to me.
That's awesome. So you mentioned collecting runs right now. I want to see if you're any better than me. How many active runs are you currently finding yourself chasing? Are you good at focusing on just one run at a time, or are you a space case like me who goes, "Ooh, I'm going to simultaneously collect runs of Batman, ASM, Mystery in Space, and
So the way I do it is I I know about 5 or 6 runs that I'm after, right? I'm
uh-huh.
after Marvel, Star Wars, G.I. Joe, Conan. I'm really close on Conan, Battlestar Galactica, and Indiana Jones. I'm only missing 2 books for my Marvel Indiana Jones run.
Hmm.
So those are the 5 that I'm really
Those
hyper
sound like
focused on.
those are some interesting runs, but definitely a lot less expensive than my damn ASM pre 100 run."
I had the ASM pre 100s. When I got out of comics and then came back, I got rid of all my ASM stuff. Like I
I
don't
just picked
collect any Spider-Man at all.
I just picked the wrong time to go on an ASM run. My biggest advice to everybody who wants to go on says, "Oh, maybe I should start picking up some Spider-Man books," is to either avoid Volume 1, or why don't you just go to Web of Spider-Man or Spectacular Spider-Man? Ain't
Right.
nobody chasing those. They're
Right.
cheap.
Well, and I prefer Spectacular. I think it was a better book, in my opinion, because I was more into Peter Parker and then Spider-Man secondary, where ASM is more Spider-Man
Right.
with Peter Parker secondary. So I was really into Peter Parker, and I do have #1. It's actually at CGC right now. So that's a really cool one. I think I'm about to switch over to CBCS. I think they're going to change their labels. So hopefully that'll happen and make me happy.
Wow. This has been I didn't imagine that this would go a full hour. I thank you very much for coming on and taking the time and sharing a bit about this. And everybody who's been in the audience, everyone who watches this on the rewind, for going through this. I hope that you found this interesting, entertaining. I know I most certainly did. And turns out I'm surrounded by Conan fans. I guess when I do my I guess when I go to do my spotlight character feature on Conan, I have another person I can reach out to potentially join us, other than just Gary and Matt.
Oh, I love that. I'm a big Conan guy.
Oh, guys, everybody, thanks again, like I said, for coming on out. Appreciate you all. Um, Make sure that you like, subscribe, hit thumbs up, whatever. Make sure you follow Rogue Trader over on Instagram at Rogue Trader, or at the Rogue Trader, and
The Rogue
also
Trader Utah.
and then his website, theroguetraderutah.com. Use that code FatStax at checkout, save 20% off, and get $10 donated to C3 Comics Curing Cancer. Until next time, guys, as I always say, collect what you want. Don't listen to anybody, including myself, because I'm just a man with a fat stack of comics and a fat opinion. Thanks for watching.